Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers and to our head-to-head of the new HOKA Mach X2 and the HOKA Mach 6. Now the original Mach X took the Mach formula and attempted to add some turbo to the ride with a carbon plate. However, while the Mach X was a good shoe, it failed to pack the punch some runners wanted. The HOKA Mach X2 here aims to rectify that with a bigger stacked PIBA carbon plate combo that aims to add more super trainer oomph into your runs and put some distance between itself and the stablemate Mach 6. But has it succeeded? And does the Mach X2 now offer the X factor to justify that higher price tag that it comes with? Well, myself and Nick have logged the test miles to find out, so let's get into it. Details first then, starting with the stacks. In the men's shoe, the HOKA Mach 6 stack height packs 37mm in the heel, 32 in the forefoot. The women's sits at 35mm in the heel and 30mm in the forefoot. The HOKA Mach X2 now has an increased stack height of 38-33 in the women's, 44-39mm in the men's. Both shoes come in with a 5mm drop. The Mach 6 is the lighter shoe, tipping the scales at 8.1 ounces or 230 grams in a US men's 9 or a UK men's 8.5 test shoe. The HOKA Mach X2 weighs in at 8.7 ounces or 246 grams by comparison. Price-wise, the Mach X2 is one of the more expensive super trainers, landing at £170 or $190. The Mach 6 will set you back a more wallet-friendly £140 or $140. Now when it comes to design, there's now a bigger distinction between the HOKA Mach X2 and the Mach 6 than we saw with the previous two generations of these shoes. The HOKA Mach 6 midsole now packs a single layer of rockered supercritical EVA that HOKA says creates a more responsive ride, while the Mach 2 has a 3-part dual foam midsole with a thicker layer of PIBA foam sitting on top of a new winged plate and a layer of supercritical EVA underneath that. Now the Mach X2 geometry echoes the racier HOKA Cielo X that we had with a bigger stack and a more aggressive early stage rocker here for snappier toe-offs and a springier, punchier, pacier ride. Up top, the Mach 6's new Creole Jacquard mesh uppers provide marginally more structure than you'll get with the Mach X2, which have got a kind of a racier, kind of woven uppers. Both shoes have flat, wrapping, gusseted tongues. The Mach 6's medium padded heel collars have quite a rigid heel counter and a more trad daily trainer vibe compared to the Mach X2, which have this kind of minimal carbon racer style heel collars that strip things back to a couple of small side pads and a very flexible heel counter insert. If you flip the shoes over, then the Mach 6 has a larger covering of outsole rubber compared to the strategic protection that you're going to get on the Mach X2, though that doesn't really seem to leave too many worrying areas of exposed foam on the Mach X2. The Mach X2 also has a couple of big central cutouts here which are there to save weight, and they occasionally will catch stones.
So when it comes to the fit of the two Mach shoes, I have them in my normal UK size 9, which is a US 9.5 for HOKA. I tend to get a really good fit from HOKA shoes because I have quite a narrow foot. I'm on the smaller end of my size and they have a nice dialed in fit that works really well for me, but they are both quite narrow shoes, so that might be something to look out for if you have more of a wide foot or a normal foot even, and there is wide sizes available of both, I think, in certain colourways, so you could look at that. No concerns at all with the fit of the Mach 6, got a really nice fit, really comfortable all round, nice bit of padding at the heel but not too much, just in general a great fit. Bit more of a concern with the Mach X2, with the more minimal upper you have on the shoe in general, and especially around the heel where there's not really any kind of heel counter or much padding at all at the heel. It's got a tendency to maybe rub some people the wrong way, I'd say. I heel lock the shoe. I've been out on pretty long runs in the shoe. It's not been a big problem for me, but something to look out for with the Mach X2 is definitely that heel design, which can be a bit of a cutter. But no concerns at all with the fit on the Mach 6, and I would stick to your normal size, just bearing in mind they can be a bit narrow, these HOKA shoes.
Now then, the fit of both shoes is snug and secure. If you've run in HOKA shoes before, you'll know the drill here. They do come up a bit narrow in the toe box and the back of the toes, though the Mach X2 is notably tighter and less roomy. The new woven uppers are light and airy enough, but there's not much wiggle room at all into the toe box of this shoe. I'm not 100% in love with the overall feel of the Mach X2. It's not uncomfortable, but it doesn't quite disappear. It comes in a little tight and snug, and at times I felt a numbness in my feet from everything being just a little bit too cramped. It's almost like a race fit taken a little bit too far for me. That may well be fixed by going up half a size or opting for a wide fit, but in my regular size the fit was somewhat snug. You'd call it a race fit if you're being generous though. The Mach 6 affords a little more space with just about enough wiggle room across the top of the toes into the toe box. And on the plus side, the locked in feel of both of these shoes mean you do get a secure hold in the heels and across the midfoot. There's no danger of slipping off the midsole here even on sort of tighter twists. Now, if you like things really dialed in, you can probably get away with going true to size in both shoes. But if you want a little more room, then it's probably worth considering shifting up half a size or looking at the wide options in those shoes.
The Mach 6 and the HOKA Mach X2 are two shoes I really like. They're two shoes I go back to regularly when I'm not testing other shoes, and I've put about 120k on the Mach X2 now and about 70k on the Mach 6 overall. I think they're great shoes, and unlike the Mach 5 and the Mach X, I think they do different jobs and they both do their jobs really well. So I found with the original Mach X, it wasn't the speediest shoe. It didn't really feel like a super trainer to me. It felt like a shoe for knocking out daily runs, long runs, that kind of thing, which is what I did in the Mach 5 already. Whereas with the latest generations of the shoes, the Mach 6 is still, like the Mach 5, a very good lightweight daily trainer that I think can do a bit of everything, whereas the Mach X2 is more of a super trainer. It's a more of a performance shoe that feels very fast. It's the kind of shoe you can do your fastest speed sessions in, but it also has quite a lot of versatility. I enjoy doing easy runs in this shoe, and if the Mach 6 is a little bit more comfortable, but I feel like we have a proper super trainer on our hands with the Mach X2, which I didn't think was the case with the Mach X, whereas the Mach 6 is more of your traditional general daily trainer. I think it's geared a bit more towards speed running, I think, in terms of Hoka's language around the Mach 6, but I think it's just an outstanding all-round shoe. I think it's really comfortable. You've got a nice high stack height there. You can definitely use it for easy running. It's got a really natural ride, the Mach 6 for sure. It just disappears on the foot. You can move through your paces very comfortably in it, and I think the only area it probably really lacks is when you go to those all-out speeds, race speeds, maybe track sessions, that kind of thing, which is where something like the Mach X2 really shines, because it has got that Piba foam on top, the plate in the midsole, the higher stack, in still what is a lightweight design, and it delivers a very fast ride that I've really enjoyed for everything fast, really. I've done kind of 1k reps in it, I've done progression runs, I've done long hard runs, tempo runs, and it all feels really good. And like I say, for me, it does feel like a shoe that you can do those easy runs in as well. That is probably the area where the Mach 6 excels, just with a more toned down, relaxed ride, more comfortable fit on the upper for sure, and less of the kind of go fast feel you get from the Mach X2, which sometimes might make it a bit trickier to try and do easy runs in the shoe. Done a short run in both shoes at the same time. You definitely feel the extra bounce, I think, in the Mach X2, and it feels a lot more poppy off the forefoot in particular. With the Mach 6, you just kind of glide through your foot strike with that rocker. The foam is good, it's comfortable, supportive, it's responsive enough, but it doesn't really give you the same punch that you get from the mix of foams and the plate in the Mach X2. It feels like a higher shoe, it feels like it's pushing you forward a bit more as well, the Mach X2, I'd say, whereas in general it's just a much more relaxed shoe, the Mach 6. It's a really nice shoe for that reason. Like, I really like just putting it on, knowing that I'm just going to go out and run, and it will just be there, comfortable, supportive. You won't really notice it that much. It's just a great tick over shoe, whereas the Mach X2 feels like it's adding a bit more drive, a bit more punch to your runs.
Run test then. In testing, I've run north of 50 miles in the HOKA Mach 6 with a good mix of marathon training sessions from fast intervals and fartleks up to progression runs. I've also done slower, easier miles, plus an all-out 10k race where I actually clocked a new 10k PB. Not a shoe you necessarily choose for that, but it did work for that race. I've clocked around 45 miles in the HOKA Mach X2, including progression runs moving from easy up to half marathon pace, some shorter runs with intervals at 5k pace. Done the odd slower run too. I've also raced a kind of mixed terrain half marathon in the shoe. I've got a run test coming up on the channel for those soon. I've done most of my miles on the road, but some on light off-road river paths in both shoes as well. Now, these are both great shoes. The HOKA Mach 6 is fun, light and lively. It's a good value, versatile, do-it-all daily trainer that can cover a wide range of runs. The HOKA Mach X2 is a big step up from the previous Mach X. The higher stack and tweak plate definitely add a punch to the midsole ride. And there's now a more pronounced kind of race-ready performance when you compare it to the Mach 6. If I had to differentiate the two shoes, I would say that the Mach 6 is stiffer and more responsive, while the Mach X2 is springier and more energetic. The Mach X2 rocker feels more aggressive, and you can feel the plate engaging, working with that dual foam midsole to provide a highly energetic ride. I think the Mach 6 is certainly no slouch, but there's definitely a marked difference here now between these two shoes. The Mach 6 also, I would say, is hands down the more comfortable shoe. It's got more inherent stability too, while the Mach X2 is notably racier, and I would say a little bit more wobbly overall.
When it comes to the verdict, I think there's a few different ways of looking at this. If you just want one shoe to do it all and you are prepared to pay for it, I think the Mach X2 will give you that higher level of performance when it comes to faster runs. But if you're more of a relaxed runner, you're just generally going out for daily runs, long runs, you're not really looking to push the pace with speed sessions or go racing, then I think the Mach 6 would be a suitable choice to do everything as well. You could also look at combining these shoes in a really enjoyable rotation. I would say, like I say, the Mach 6 I think is a great shoe for easy runs, very relaxed recovery runs, doing a bit of everything, can do easy to steady progression runs and some faster stuff as well. Then the Mach X2 would be your speed day shoe, your race day shoe, your tempo shoe, fast long runs, that kind of thing. They would work together as a very nice little 1-2 punch if you're not looking to use like a carbon shoe instead. And you might also have preferences about whether you want to use a plated trainer the whole time, and whether you really want the slightly higher, more unnatural feel of the Mach X2. And if you don't, then the Mach 6 is a great shoe to go for. It's one of the best plate-free training shoes out there, I would say, along with things like the New Balance Rebel or the Asics Superblast, which is much more expensive. That's the other advantage to the Mach 6. It's a fair bit cheaper than the Mach X2, and you are getting a really capable all-round shoe, but you do get some added punch from the Mach X2 because of the foams and the plates in there. And in contrast to last year, where I would have definitely recommended going for the Mach 5 over the Mach X because it was a cheaper shoe, a larger shoe, and I think an equally versatile shoe, I think you are now getting a super trainer experience with the HOKA Mach X2 that does deliver that extra punch and speed when you want it, but is also a very versatile shoe that you can do everything in if you get on with the upper and don't mind the slightly punchier ride you have here for easy runs. Mach 6, much more relaxed shoe. So yeah, I love them both. I think the Mach X2 is one of my favourite shoes of the year, so I'd be getting this probably. But actually, I'd probably use these shoes for slightly different purposes in my own rotation, with the Mach 6 being the comfortable shoe, especially around the upper, that I'd be very happy to use for loads and loads of miles, and then the Mach X2 being more of a speed-focused shoe, fast long-run shoe, that kind of thing.
Verdict then, and HOKA has made two good versatile daily trainers here, and while there's still crossover in the types of run I think the Mach 6 and the Mach X2 can cater for, I think there's also quite a clear difference in what they do best. The Mach 6 is better for your slower range miles, but has a snappy lightweight response that can cope with up-tempo runs as well. The Mach X2 is undoubtedly built for speed and excels at shorter, faster efforts. I'd argue that the Mach X2 is as lively as some of the older generation carbon race shoes, if you think back to things like the original Carbon X, those kind of things. This is probably a step on from those, and that gives it fast training and all-out racing credentials. However, unless you get on with the snug race fit, I'd argue that there's a half marathon sweet spot for this shoe. More down to the comfort though than the ride. That big midsole stack offers protection too, which is good for long hauling, but I think the tight fit might not be so accommodating for those kind of longer time on feet runs. Now, with the past generations, the choice here was definitely, I think, an either or. You probably didn't want to have both shoes in your rotation, but I think there's now arguably room for the HOKA Mach 6 and the HOKA Mach X2 to slot into a rotation. If I had to choose one shoe, I think the Mach X2 probably shades it just on that performance and liveness. It's one of the best shoes I've tested this year, and it definitely puts the super in super trainer. So there you have it. That's our head-to-head of the HOKA Mach 6 versus the HOKA Mach X2. Hope you found it useful. If you did, maybe give us a like, maybe hit subscribe if you're not already. If you're after reviews of these two shoes, go pop those up on the channel now. Otherwise, thank you very much for stopping by. As ever, we really appreciate your time. And until next time, whatever you're doing, happy running, people.